Any of you. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that's worked since the 1930s in Denver and of course 1920 nationally to improve our systems of government and impact public policies through voter education and advocacy. Our briefings throughout the League year, such as this one, serve to educate our members and voters and often lead to advocacy. Tonight, we're holding a voter education briefing before the municipal election on Tuesday, April 4th. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. As you just heard and were notified, we're recording tonight, and the recording can be found after the briefing on our website. Maybe not immediately, but probably tomorrow. We're again very excited to have so many guests. If you're from another organization, could you please put that in chat or add it to your name by renaming? We'd love to hear from you. So the agenda tonight is, we already did the welcome and the coin flip. We're going to have two presentations, one from the pro side and one from the con side. The presentations will be 20 minutes each, and then they'll be followed by 25 minutes of questions and answers. So during the presentations, if you would use chat to ask the questions, and then at the end of each section, I will present them to our speakers. The chat is the only place that you will be able to ask questions, so please use that. The chat area also turns out to be a good place for sharing information with each other, and so feel free to use it for that as well. Again, we've muted everyone to make sure we can all hear our speakers clearly. And I will see you again in a few minutes after the first presentation and with questions and with your questions. Now I'll hand it over to Sue Stark.
Thank you, Pearlanne. We're glad to see so many people interested in referred question 2.0. That was not a joke. As Pearlanne just described, you're using a format designed just for this ballot issue program. The League of Women Voters of Denver's focus is on voter education, and with that in mind, we are providing this virtual space for Denver voters to clarify their thinking by asking questions directly to both proponents and opponents of 2.0. So comments can be put in chat, as Pearlanne said, and attendees can read those, but she will be posing questions from the chat questions to the speakers. She'll not be reading aloud the comments in chat. Tonight's presenters may post 2 to 3 links in chat to materials specifically designed for voter education. This briefing is being taped, as you just heard, and will be available on our webpage, lwvdenver.org, for people who could not join the Zoom tonight, and links to the presenters' written materials can be seen by going to our website and viewing the tape of tonight's program, in case you missed seeing the links in the chat. As with each election, League of Women Voters does a pro and con brochure on all of the ballot issues. The English version of that brochure is on our website now. Go to the tab labeled Voting and click on the link that goes to Ballot Issues. This brochure in Spanish will be available soon as well. We hope to get you hooked on coming to the League of Women Voters briefings. Our upcoming virtual briefings are on March 21st, Tuesday at 5:30. The topic will be access to reproductive health care and abortion in Colorado, focusing on current needs and challenges as well as legislative proposals. With panelists from Planned Parenthood, Cobalt, and Color, as well as the Colorado State League's Task Force on Reproductive Health Care. And then on Tuesday, April 18th, also by Zoom at 5:30, we'll have a briefing on the Denver Basic Income Project with Mark Donovan, the project's founder, as the speaker. Again, you can go to our website for more information and to register for briefings, which are open to anyone, not just members. And you might even decide to support us by becoming a member yourself. We hope so. So next, I will introduce the speakers who are in support of 2.0. We had a coin flip before the meeting opened, and the person for no on 2.0 chose to go second, so that group will go second. I'll introduce each group separately. Dr. Carol Watkins Ali is a pastoral and public theologian and author. She earned a joint doctoral degree in theology, religious studies, and psychological studies from the University of Denver and the Iliff School of Theology. She is the executive director of the Greater Denver Interfaith Alliance and executive director of Watkins Ali and Associates, a consulting firm. She is a longtime resident and active community member of Northeast Park Hill. She was part of the group that negotiated the community benefits agreement, about which you're going to hear a lot tonight. And her organization is one of the nonprofits that has joined the Park Hill Community Benefits Agreement Coalition. Dr. Watkins Ali is also the convener of Above the Ground Emancipation Movement, which is a national collaborative effort to develop, implement, and replicate a communal system of care to impact the mental and spiritual healing of Black people in this country. Heather Lafferty is CEO and Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver, which has made a difference in our community for many years, locally and nationally since 1999. Habitat for Humanity Metro Denver, Heather joined Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver beginning in 2008. Under her leadership, a $30 million organization now serves more than 200 new households annually, advocates for housing and racial equality policies, and mobilizes tens of thousands of volunteers across the area to engage in a tangible solution. Habitat also operates 4 restores, a social enterprise that annually keeps thousands of tons of potential waste out of the landfill and generates $6 million each year in gross revenue for the organization. Habitat's support of 2.0 is based on increasing affordable for sale home ownership, and that is an effective solution to our city's most urgent problems: the need for affordable homes and accessible parks. Norman Harris, his love for Denver, especially the 5 Points and Park Hill neighborhoods, is 5 generations deep. Born and raised in Denver, he graduated with a bachelor's degree from Colorado State University. Mr. Harris grew up in the 5 Points neighborhood and experienced his family being forced to sell their property there. From 2012, he worked to rejuvenate Denver's Juneteenth celebration and the Jazz in 5 Points event. Currently, he is CEO and managing partner of the Holleran Group. He has been involved in the Empower Northeast Denver campaign and states that, quote, the need for environmental justice to be intersectional in addressing the generations of discrimination in terms of redlining, disinvestment, divestment, voter suppression, and much more that the Northeast Denver neighborhood has experienced. I don't know which of you speakers would like to begin, but we welcome all of you here tonight.
Dr. Ali is going to start, and I will share my screen. So if someone can just confirm. Susan, can you see the yes on 2020 screen? Great, thank you. Carol, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Carol? Okay, unmute yourself, Carol.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, just 1 second here. to go through this little process here. Good evening. It's good to be with you. I commend the League of Women Voters in Denver on having this educational forum on what appears to be the issue for the upcoming election, yes or no on 2-0. For me, it is a straightforward common sense vote of yes, which puts the basic human needs of people over the politics of property. As a community member living through the decline of a once thriving community, witnessing the displacement of people forced out of their neighborhood, mostly Black and brown, and having firsthand knowledge of the history surrounding Park Hill Golf Course, this is an instance when development is a very welcome thing, especially when developers and community can work together in the best interest of the people in the immediate community. Recognizing that the voice of the people had been silenced when it came to what occurred around property in our community. My husband, I, and others determined that this time the people of Northeast Denver, past and present, should have a voice in what would be developed at the Park Hill Golf Hill site. We saw it as an opportunity to rebuild, recover, revive, and yes, redevelop what had been lost through redlining and political domination of others from outside our community. The last 4 years, we have engaged every aspect of the process, beginning in neighborhood coalition meetings, city council meetings, being proponents of getting 302 on the ballot, campaigning for 302, participating in the small area planning steering committee, forming the community benefits agreement committee, and finally negotiating a comprehensive CBA with the developers. The struggle continues. Contrary to negative press given that we have been in the pocket of the developers, as if we cannot think for ourselves, nothing could be further from the truth. We struggled with the developers throughout, up to finally reaching a CBA. In the process, we have gained a great deal of respect for Westside Development Incorporated and the Halloran Group, who were willing to entertain negotiating a CBA in the first place and then seeing it through to the end. Notably, during this process, we've also engaged other developers, Habitat for Humanity, Brothers Redevelopment, Elevation Land Trusts, Volunteer of Americas, and others. In essence, the CBA provides for many benefits to the community. To list a few, it is responsive to Denver's housing crisis with affordable, attainable housing for families and seniors. It allows for the return of former residents to the neighborhood. It addresses a food desert, provides economic development and building of generational wealth, addresses environmental concerns, provides provision for long-term community oversight of the CBA. Norman Harris of Halloran, of the Halloran Group, and Heather Lafferty of Habitat for Humanity will follow with more specific details. I think you will find that the CBA aligns with many of the policies the League of Women Voters of Denver ascribe to as it pertains to sound planning for the protection of Denver residents in terms of housing and environment. In closing, we applaud your efforts urging people to exercise their right to vote once they have informed themselves. Unfortunately, the last vote on the Park Hill Golf Course, 301 versus 302, did not represent democracy at its best. Sadly, only a very small percentage of the voting public came out to the polls. And of that number, still small in numbers, the majority voted to silence the voice of the local community again by a citywide vote. I believe the issues were distorted If voters had stopped to think about how they would not like to have their voices silenced on issues in their local communities, they would have voted differently. This is not about green versus concrete. Again, it is about the basic human rights of people to have safe, affordable housing versus the elitist politics of property. Having come this far, the people of Northeast Park Hill hope to get our voice back through a yes vote on 20. Please vote yes on 2-0. Thank you for your time. It has been an honor to be with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the next speaker?
And Heather, I'll let you know when to switch the screens. Good evening. My name is Norman Harris. I'm the managing partner of the Hollering Group. We're an African-American owned development company based in Denver, Colorado. We're also co-owners and co-developers of the Park Hill Golf Course. We bring to the table 50 plus years of working with our community. I'm a fifth generation Coloradan, born and raised in Northeast Denver. In my 46 years, I've witnessed and lived through divestment, which has led to severe disparity for myself and peers alike. Things such as access to healthy foods, quality recreational opportunities, and employment opportunities have been and are scarce for people living in my community, and the outcomes are evident. Raising my son, who graduated from East High School, where less than 50% of his peers who are African-American crossed the graduation podium, was another stark reminder that our community deserves better. My company, the Hollering Group's role in this project is to engage our community in the benefits of developing the golf course and helping shape our partnership's equity plan. After 3+ years and thousands of conversations, we are proud to promote our development agreement and community benefits agreement as tools that will ensure the community wins in this important decision. So today, we humbly request the endorsement from the League of Women Voters to advocate its followers and members to vote yes on 2-0. And while I could itemize hundreds of reasons to support a yes on 2-0, with my time, I want to assert, and we can go to the next slide, I'm sorry. And while I could itemize hundreds of reasons to support yes on 2-0, with my time, I want to assert how our vision for equity has driven the creation of legally binding agreements that benefit the community first. We believe that this new model for development, and we have put equity first in our approach. Voting yes for 2.0 or for 2.0 means something for everyone, totaling more than $150 million in guaranteed community benefits. Our plan provides the opportunity for our community to thrive, and that starts with having access to healthy food. Having a grocery store is a game changer, an amenity that will improve the daily lives of a community that has been a food desert for the last 50 years. And with our focus on equity, our plan creates affordable commercial space for Black and BIPOC-owned businesses to thrive, creating a foundation for an ecosystem to build generational wealth through homeownership and entrepreneurship. Finally, we believe our commitment to affordable housing and the choice of qualified partners, Brothers Redevelopment, Elevation Land Trust, and Volunteers of America are the signature of our equity commitment. With your support, we will build hundreds of affordable, quality for sale and for rent homes near major transit ways, creating sustainable opportunities for people to live and support a healthy environment. Our equity lens has driven us to create a property tax fund. We are actually drawing a half-mile radius around the golf course and paying incremental tax increases of those affected by the development for people below 60% AMI. We are also creating preference policies and targeted marketing efforts to assure opportunities for affordable housing get to those who have been displaced and historically marginalized. These are all benefits that you can approve with a yes on 2-0. These are all benefits that outweigh keeping a golf course, which equates with a no on 2-0. In closing, I would like to express, and we can go to the next slide, that I believe we have developed an eloquent solution which balances the needs for parks and open space along with the need for housing and smart development. And here is a quote from Kelly Nordini, Executive Director of Conservation Colorado. Next slide, please. To reduce transportation pollution and protect our environment, we need to give people more affordable housing options nearer to jobs, schools, grocery stores, parks, transit stations, and other places they need to go. Colorado won't be able to reach its climate goals until we start taking big steps in this direction. So I humbly appreciate your time and hope that you can support a yes on 2.0, and I'll pass it on to Heather Lafferty with Habitat for Humanity. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you so much, Norman. Appreciate that and appreciate your experience in Park Hill and certainly your vision. Good evening to all of our viewers tonight. I'm so excited and honored to be able to join you, to be able to talk about this unique opportunity that we have in Northeast Denver, and why Habitat for Humanity is in support of this, the vision for redeveloping the Park Hill Golf Course. As we get started, let me just share a little bit about Habitat so that you can kind of understand the foundation for the decision that we made. We believe at our core that everyone deserves to have a decent, healthy, affordable place to call home. And we focus on ensuring that people have the stability of housing, but they also have the economic mobility that comes along with home ownership. And when we come together as a community, we have experience and know that this is possible. The need for housing in our community is so significant. You can look at it a lot of different ways, but the way we focus on it is looking at housing cost burden. 1 in 4 households in our community are paying more than 30% of their monthly income on rent. When you look at the lower income, so households below 80% of area median income, that goes up to 7 out of 10 households, which really goes to show that the expense of housing in our community is keeping people from doing the other things that they want to focus on. With an average house price well above $500,000, we are facing a place where our incomes do not allow us to have as many first-time home buyers, especially first-generation home buyers, as we want in a community. So who do we serve? We serve people who are essential workers in our community, frontline. Those were kind of the way we talked about people in the workforce in our community during COVID, and that has been essential. They are always essential in our community. And so that is who we serve. And the majority of them are first-generation homeowners. And so they haven't had the ability to gain wealth through the generational wealth of homeownership from their previous, from previous generations. And so this is a unique opportunity for them to be able to create an opportunity for themselves and for their kids. And more than 3/4 of our households include people of color. And I know many of you understand the history of discrimination when it comes to home ownership in our country for Black, Brown households across our community. And that is something that we are looking to change. So Habitat, we build homes, we preserve homes. There are more than 1,500 around the Metro Denver area, including several hundred in our community land trust. And this is a way, and we will in the Park Hill area as well, that we're able to ensure permanent affordability with these homes. And so we're creating opportunities today for low and moderate income households, and those opportunities will still be in place in the future. And I talked about economic mobility a few minutes ago. And when you look at our shared equity model, homeowners in our program are on average able to gain about $10,000 in equity a year. And that is really important to creating that foundation for a different future. So as I said, Habitat for Humanity supports and is a yes on 2.0 for a variety of reasons. And some of these were touched on, but that, you know, we need more housing across the board. We especially, of course, need more permanently affordable housing. Our focus, as I mentioned, is on for sale. This is one of the unique projects in the Denver area that is carving out and ensuring that there will be affordable home ownership opportunities, in addition to affordable for seniors, low-income households, including for families and people who are most vulnerable. And so we really are focused at the diversity of housing that this community will create. And the other unique thing is, and that we're always striving for, is how do we ensure that there's affordable housing with access to amenities? Oftentimes people want to put affordable housing off to the side, and that is not how we create affordable communities. We can't stick it in an industrial park and hope that, you know, it works. It won't. We need diverse housing across our community, and this is a wonderful place to do that. There'll be a park, a 100-acre park. This is the 4th largest park in Denver. To have affordable housing right there is incredible. As Norman talked about, you know, climate policy is housing policy. We need more housing closer to jobs, closer to schools, closer to healthcare, so that we don't have the sprawl that creates more pollution as people are commuting further and further. So to be able to have this type of high quality housing in Denver is so important, and we are so focused on ensuring that that is an essence of this. And I know that aligns with the League of Women Voters policy priorities as well. How do we use land, and how is it positively impacting the climate? And the last thing I want to share, you know, children growing up in Habitat homes, 95% graduate from high school. This is about a 20-point improvement in graduation rates in Denver and across the state. And those rates are of all income levels. And so earlier when I said housing is stability, that is so critical. The young gentleman in the center of this photo, he and his family moved 8 times between kindergarten and 8th grade. He did not focus on school. He did not get involved in sports because he knew he would just have to up and leave sometime in the next year. He and his family moved into their Habitat home in northeast Denver as he was going into a freshman year of high school. He graduated top of his class from DSST in Montbello, and he is now a senior at Yale University on a full ride scholarship. And so when we think about the bright futures that this community will create, it is priceless. It is endless. There is so much possibility here, and we as Denver voters have an opportunity to influence. So thank you for considering your endorsement, for supporting 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you. With about the minute left that this side still has, I had a email from Noah Stout. He's the attorney that was working with the community to craft the community benefits agreement. And he asked me to read this statement. This CBA is a legally binding agreement between community nonprofit organizations and the developer that has been recorded with the city of Denver. As a contract, this CBA is legally enforceable by any of the 10 community nonprofit organizations that signed the CBA. CBAs ensure that the developer's promises regarding community benefits are legally enforceable. Developers pitching a project often make promises that are never written into the development agreement or are never enforced, even if they are included. CBAs commit developers in writing to promises they make regarding their projects and make enforcement much easier. I know that some community members had expressed concern that a CBA would not only apply to the current developer. This was a real concern for the coalition, as they were advised by national CBA experts that developers might assign portions of the land to various other developers in order to increase profit and potentially circumvent a CBA's requirements. Making sure that legal requirements bind these entities can be complex, as there may be lengthy a lengthy chain of contracts involved. Therefore, it was critical that the CBA explicitly states that the CBA binds parties other than the developers, contractors, various subcontractors, entities to whom the developer sells land and so forth. This agreement is binding upon the developer and its successors and assigns in and to the property. This agreement shall be recorded. Upon recording, the provisions of this agreement shall constitute covenants and servitudes that attach to, and run with the property. That language is taken directly from the CBA, section 1.2 to be exact. Okay. We now will have Pearlanne read questions from the chat. Again, I'll remind you that questions are only going to be posed in chat. We're asking everybody except the presenters, the current presenters, to stay muted, but the current presenters are welcome to unmute themselves. Okay.
All right. I think I'm ready, Sue. Thanks
Good,
so much
go.
Thanks so much, everyone, for putting your questions in. There's lots of discussion going on in chat, which is great. And so I'm leaving those there. I was just taking out the questions. Again, this is just for the pro side. The first question is, what is the enforcement mechanism for the community benefits agreement?
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
Dr. Carroll, did you want to speak to that in terms of the committee? Unmute yourself, Dr. Carroll.
As part of the agreement, the provision for an implementation committee to be developed to oversee with startup funds and for the accommodations to do this, as long as necessary. So everything will go past the CBA implementation board.
And to speak more specifically to that, that board is made up of both community members and the development community that is at the table, Brothers Redevelopment, the VOA, et cetera. But we have ensured oversight for this project to assure that we are meeting our commitments. And that is a part of the community benefits agreement and a legally binding.
All right, this is a similar kind of question. Is this correct? I have heard that if the measure doesn't pass, the developer could sell the easement back to the city and it wouldn't be required to remain a golf course.
That's not correct. With a no vote, we are required to return or to continue to operate the land as an 18-hole regulation daily fee golf course.
All right. In Governor Polis's recent State of the State, he said, quote, housing policy is climate policy. Housing policy is water policy. Housing policy is equity policy. This question is going to be asked of both sides. How does your position meet the governor's statement? Does it?
I will jump in on this one, if that's okay. I was there when the governor said this, and I have to say I felt like, the choir started singing, because this is what we have been saying from, maybe not as elegantly as the governor, but housing is the foundation, and how we use our land to build housing is so important. When we force less dense housing, as I said, it pushes more people further apart when we want to be bringing people together. How we use water, how we think about at bringing communities together in an equitable way. It all comes together with housing. And so when I think about the plans for the Park Hill Golf Course redevelopment, to me, what that vision is all of these things. It is a place where we are using land appropriately by building both homes and parks, So it is both. We get both with this plan, and that is so critical. We will be able to better use water than a golf course. It's like thousands of gallons. I can't even count that high. How many gallons are used to water bluegrass on a golf course? That is not good water policy. Being able to build efficient housing is. And when we think about equity, again, this is why Habitat is in this. Housing creates stability and equity and mobility. And that is what this plan does by having diverse housing built throughout the neighborhood. So I think this quote beautifully sums up what the vision of the Park Hill community will be. Thank you.
So in a related question, what does affordable housing mean? How is it affordable? I think that would be for you too, Heather. I assume you know
Sure.
this, right?
Sure. So affordable housing by definition for anybody is that you're not paying more than 30% of your income on housing. And so when we talk about that in the kind of what the need is and the continuum of need in housing, it's really focused on people who are earning usually below 100% of area median income. So I don't mean to get into jargon, but you look at income and we look at what housing affordability is. And so that's how we build it together. In Park Hill, the affordable housing that is planned there includes rental housing for people who are most vulnerable and at risk for homelessness. We have affordable rental housing for families. We also have affordable housing for seniors, in addition to what Habitat and our partners Elevation will build, and that is affordable for sale housing, providing home ownership, equity building opportunities for households up to 100 and 120% AMI. We specifically focus on below 80% AMI, which is more in alignment with incomes in the existing Northeast Park Hill area.
I want to just jump on, just maybe tag on the back of that. In terms of the things that we have thought through to assure these outcomes are equitable, I really want to call out our property tax fund because it's a model that I think the rest of Denver development can follow. So along with building and creating affordable housing, what we were also concerned about and what so many folks are concerned about is the displacement of folks in the neighborhood as a result of development happening. And so I would love to just restate that we are going to draw a half-mile radius around the golf course, and anyone impacted by an increase in property taxes above 60%, or I'm sorry, below 60% AMI, we're going to pay the incremental differences in their property taxes. Along with creating these affordable houses, what we are also creating are preference policies so we can identify people who have been displaced and put them at the front of the line in terms of marketing and visibility of these homes. So we are very concerned that there are equitable outcomes and that these opportunities actually flow to the folks who most deserve them. And again, we always want to express this is not an either or type of situation, that we're creating all this next to a 100-acre park that balances out the needs of folks who want open space, but also want the opportunity to live near that space. And we really think we have an eloquent solution here.
So how would you, as a group, respond to the criticism that the CBA process was not as publicly available as it could have been? What was the process of getting public input for the CBA?
CBAs are normally confidential ways of addressing situations like this. It is done in confidence. The CBA itself is really a special interest group like SOS is. It's the interest of developing this land. And so therefore, the community members who were in agreement to develop on the land, that was the special interest for the CBA. But they are traditionally done that way. And at some point in time, as the agreement itself will be made public. Those who are part of it will be made public too. I was very glad that it was in confidence with all of the vitriol and whatnot that was taking place in the community.
I think you might have frozen, Carol.
Would one of the others of you like to continue?
Yeah,
Answer that.
I think the point that Dr. Carroll was making, and there are 10 credible community organizations that are part of that agreement. But that this has not been an easy process for individuals who have stood up for their community. As Dr. Carroll led off, that she has been a part of this because she loves her community. But as a result of her standing up and many others, they have faced retaliation, and that from folks who oppose their position. And so part of the group being protected was that they were not a public group, or at least made public to some of those oppositions. I think where she was going before she was cut off.
I hope she wasn't cut off. I think she just got, she just froze.
You know, again, traditionally, they are basically confidential. And I think the thing to remember is that it is a special interest type of group. People having the same special interests. And this is around benefits to the community to develop this land. And therefore, you know, not entertaining why we should not develop it. That was already a given.
Well, and if I can just jump in there and just share from our perspective, having been a part of, community benefits agreements in different places, what was really powerful in this process was that the community navigator report that was created included the voices of hundreds of people, from the immediate community, from Northeast Park Hill and the surrounding area. And so from our perspective, we were not, at the table for all the CBA meetings, but what we really found powerful was that they aligned with what they heard in that survey, what that was needed, and then negotiated directly based on that kind of shared vision for what the community, how the community could benefit from this. So I think that idea that it was just a few people in a room coming up with all these ideas on their own, from a kind of third party perspective, that's not what I saw at all. What I saw was a real community effort to get the voices. That report is available to everyone. And then a group of concerned citizens who said, hey, how can we make sure this vision comes to fruition through this process and through this plan? And so I just really want to applaud the CBA group. This is not easy. This is a lot of volunteer time, and yet they put a lot into it, and I think came up with a really, as Norman said, an elegant solution to some systemic challenges in the area.
So what's the expected timeline to complete the development of the property, and when in the process would the grocery store be built, so that it's actually helpful for the residents, the early residents? Anybody have a timeline?
The total timeline for this development could probably take over the next 12 to 15 years. We have dedicated and we'll be donating land to a grocery store to prioritize that as in one of our first few phases. I don't have a specific timeline of when the site would have a grocery store, but it is of a top priority for our project.
Thank you. So how many homes are we short in Denver to meet demand? And how many homes will this decision add or subtract from that number? And in the chat, there was a link that said 70,000. I don't know if that's true or not, or what, if you guys have that number, maybe Heather.
Yeah, Yeah, the latest I've heard is 67,000. And so, we clearly are, need these units. No one is saying that these units at Park Hill are going to solve the problem, but we have very few opportunities to build at this type of scale. I've seen a map that, suggests all the info lots that could potentially be built on. First of all, many of those are in industrial areas, and other ones are in areas that don't have the type of opportunities that this will provide. And so when I look at that map, I say, boy, we need both. We need these homes at Park Hill. We need to expand the opportunities and then build in that infill area as well, because that is what it's going to take to get us to truly solving the housing crisis that we have in Denver.
There was a question about the fund for BIPOC businesses. How will that work? And are they loans?
There's a few different aspects to the benefits for BIPOC businesses. What I was mentioning specifically is our commitment to create commercial retail space for BIPOC businesses and offered at discounted rents is a part of our plan. Another part of the legally binding agreements is a pathways program in which we are working to build capacity for companies within the construction industry to assure that there are utilization rates that exceed those that are required by the city. And so our partnership through our equity lens has developed a plan with legally binding guarantees that assure that there are businesses and business of color that are actually participating in the actual construction of the development and the operation of the development. And so those are details that live within our community benefits agreement.
What happens to the property taxes after 8 years when West Side's no longer supplementing?
They go away.
Yeah, so our
That
commitment.
was the agreement. Yeah. Go ahead.
Our commitment
So-
right now is for the 8-year period.
All right. Do you have financial numbers that counter the Denver Post analysis, which shows a shortfall between the bargain cost of the land and the benefits being provided to the city?
Repeat the question again, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you have financial numbers that counter the Denver Post analysis, which shows a shortfall between the cost of the land and the benefits being provided to the city?
Yeah, there was an article that a response that I believe some of our supporters that the Denver Post actually published in direct response to that editorial that I would refer folks to specifically. And yes, I believe through looking at our documents, you can more closely itemize the list of community benefits that are starting with a 100-acre park and 2/3 of the site being donated back to the city for parks and open space. The tens of millions of dollars it's going to take that we are committing to actually the land infrastructure to building the park, the tens of acres that we're donating to our affordable housing partners to actually build affordable housing, the acres that we are donating to a grocery store, are just a few that would far outweigh the Denver Post estimation that we were, fairly disappointed with, but understood.
So who pays for the 5 metro districts? All residents or surrounding residents? And how much per resident and for how long?
Repeat that question again, I'm sorry.
Sure. Who pays for all the 5 metro districts? All residents or surrounding residents? And how much per resident and for how long?
So it's not paid by surrounding residents, it's paid by residents on the development. What we created is a system in which those metro district revenues are generated from the for sale non-affordable portion of homes that are being built. So it's a system in which, the folks who can afford to pay a little bit more are paying those extra mill levies versus it being levied on the affordable supply of housing folks there.
Okay, so my understanding is that the conservation easement is also legally binding and perpetual. How will the development agreement CBA be different if or when a developer decides to change the terms of these agreements?
Well, I think that's I don't want to dominate if Heather or
You
Dr.
should.
Carroll. I think that's probably a legal misrepresentation that, both city attorneys and have, come to the conclusion that there was a pathway to an agreement between now the entire city of Denver and us, the owners, for there to be a different outcome. So this is pretty much, I think, a question that continues to get recirculated by our opposition, just unfortunately, I believe, to increase the confusion. There have been attorneys that have looked at this and have clearly stated the pathway for this land use agreement to be amended, and we have followed those. So, unfortunately, I'm not an attorney, but what I can say is that there have been attorneys that have looked at conservation easement and have clearly stated that upon agreement with the city and us, the owners, that we can replace a defunct golf course with affordable housing in Denver's fourth largest park.
Okay, so how can a development project move forward, adding at least 3,200 household units when there's been no comprehensive traffic study performed regarding the traffic impacts of the development, or has there been one?
What I can say is we've been very careful in the design to account for traffic impacts to the neighborhood. We're so happy with how the park is actually nestled in between Colorado Boulevard and Park Hill, and provides for, doesn't create runways that go through and race through the traditional neighborhood. I can't speak to all of the different studies at this point in time. What I can speak to is that we as Denver voters, or you as Denver voters, have a choice. Voting yes for 2.0 means that you're going to be able to replace a defunct golf course that uses $109 million of gallons of water per year with Denver's fourth largest park. You will be able to replace a defunct golf course with hundreds of much needed affordable homes for many people in the neighborhood, including seniors who are currently being priced out. And so while I can't speak specifically to a traffic study, what I can speak specifically to are to the $150+ million of benefits that we can deliver to a marginalized community that continues to face disparity, or a no vote, which would keep a golf course and it's going to advance disparity. This is a human issue, as Dr. Carroll stated. This does not have to be about politics or property. This is about we as a city understanding that we have a community that's in need, and we have the power to address that disparity with a yes vote. So that's my answer to that question.
And so the last question, we have like 2 minutes left. The last question I had that I was going to present is, can we believe the dream presented by the developers? Is Denver getting a good deal by closing the golf course and allowing development? It's a combination of two of them, which I think you answered a bit in your last response, but do you want the last 2 minutes, any of you, to answer that?
Well, I would just say, a lot of the emphasis has been on can we trust the developer? And I think the real issue is having an agreement to go forward to do development is, can we trust the community together to achieve the outcomes that we have been after? It's not just on the developer, it's on what the agreement that we have come up with and the roles that we will each play in making this a reality.
And I would just add that, we have been focused on helping to be a part of this to make this the best it possibly can be. And we feel responsible for ensuring to the community that this vision gets created. And so, especially in the realm of affordable housing, we will be very much focused on ensuring that what has been promised will get done. And so this is a community effort. We all have a role in ensuring that these community benefits are put in place. And I think there's a lot of power in all of us working together to achieve this vision.
Well, thank you for answering all the questions. There's lots of conversation going on in the chat, and I think I got to most of the questions, but if you're, the three of you wouldn't mind looking at some of them and seeing if there's some that you can respond to after we finish here. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pearlanne. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
And
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone who posed questions in chat. I'll now introduce the speakers for the no on 2.0 side. Woody Garnsey has written, my legal practice consisted primarily of dispute resolution through mediation and litigation in state and federal courts and administrative agencies and arbitration tribunals. My emphasis was on commercial disputes, including contracts, financial institutions, securities, construction, and real estate law, employment disputes, and federal Indian law disputes. Maria Flora has written that she practiced law as a sole practitioner, concentrating on bankruptcy law, bankruptcy litigation, commercial litigation, and commercial transactions from 2003 to 2020. On behalf of both of them, this is additional information for you about them. We've been actively involved with the issues regarding the future of Park Hill Golf Course and land conservation easement and open space since early 2017, when Clayton Early Learning announced its desire to break the conservation easement and sell the land. A group of us formed the grassroots citizens group Save Open Space Denver. Since Westside Investment Partners bought the land in July of 2019, we've engaged extensively with city elected officials and employees regarding the plans of Westside and the city to break the conservation easement and open the land to development. In 2021, we were the organizers behind ballot initiative 301, which won a 2-to-1 by a 2-to-1 margin throughout the city, and behind the opposition to competing ballot measure 302, which lost. We're now opposing referred question 2.0. Save Open Space Denver also recently filed a lawsuit against the city council, and Westside, challenging the legality of actions taken this January regarding the conservation easement and open space. And I will add to that, our briefing tonight will not address this lawsuit because that will be dealt with in the courts and not via votes by citizens. So please proceed. I don't know which of you will want to speak first.
I'm going to speak first, and I'd like to share a screen.
Andrea will help you do that.
Bear with me a minute, it's disappeared.
Okay, you should be able to share.
Well, There we go. Okay, thank you. My name is Woody Garnsey. Maria Flora and I are speaking as representatives of the grassroots citizens group SOS Denver. And we're speaking in opposition to the Hancock administration's referred question 2-0 that City Council referred to the voters on January 23rd. Maria and I will divide our time equally. I'll give a brief introduction and discuss some important legal issues that compel a no vote on 2-0, and Maria will discuss other important issues that compel a no vote. I want to start by briefly orienting all of us geographically and visually to the Park Hill Golf Course land. This first slide is a beautiful aerial view looking west toward downtown and toward
Excuse me,
mountains.
sorry, Woody, we're not seeing your presentation yet. We see the your files. Your file.
Well, let me see what's going on here. I'm sorry, this is not cooperating.
We'll be
But you're
patient.
not seeing the slides at all?
No,
No, we just see the file, the list of files. It could be on your other screen.
It's, yeah, unfortunately, it's showing on mine, but not yours.
Unshare and share again.
Okay. Now, do you see it now?
Not yet.
How about that?
yes,
Is it, you see it now?
Yep,
Mhm.
success.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm sorry. I am a bit of a Luddite when it comes to computers. So anyway, I just want to start by briefly orienting everybody geographically and visually. This is a beautiful aerial view looking west toward downtown. And I want to now show you a graphic just so everybody knows exactly what land we're talking about. This is the Park Hill Golf Course land. It's just east of Colorado Boulevard, just south of Smith Road and I-70. And it's just west, just east of this area with all the yellow dots here and markings, which is near the 40th and Colorado light rail station, where massive development will occur in the next several years. A few more of the slides showing what the land looks like. Here's a great winter view looking south. Here's a summer view looking west toward downtown in the mountains. Here's a beautiful wetlands area with a pond. And here's an existing path that goes through the land. A short history, this was a farm that in the late 19th century was owned by the first Denver real estate baron, whose name was George W. Clayton. And it was transferred to the Clayton Trust in 1899 when Mr. Clayton died. And it was operated as a golf course by the trust from 1931 to 2019. And in 1989, Denver voters approved a bond issue with an earmark of $2 million to purchase the land. That purchase never took place, but in 1997, the Clayton Trust went to the city needing money, and the city and Clayton Trust negotiated the conservation easement, which is an open space and recreational conservation easement, and it's perpetual. In 2019, Westside Investment bought this land subject to the conservation easement. And starting soon after that purchase, the Hancock administration began working closely with Westside to break the easement and to open the land to development. And so this brings us together today to discuss the referred question 2-0. I want to first give you a brief explanation of what a conservation easement is. It's an interest in real property that's governed exclusively by the Colorado Conservation Easement Statute. This is an interest in property, in real property, just like the city's deed to the city and county building. According to the statute, a conservation easement puts limits on uses of land to maintain the land, and I'll quote, predominantly in a natural, scenic, or open condition, or for wildlife habitat or recreational or other use or condition consistent with the protection of open land, environmental quality, or life-sustaining ecological diversity. There can be a variety of permitted uses with a conservation easement, like a golf course, but the permitted uses must be consistent with the easement's conservation purposes. So what are the current conservation purposes of this easement? They're to maintain the land's scenic and open condition and to preserve the land for recreational use. What are the current permitted uses? These permitted uses are a golf course and recreational uses such as ball fields and tennis courts. I need to address a critical legal question related to the deceptive and inaccurate language of referred question 2O. The question is, if the conservation easement is preserved, does the land always need to be operated as a golf course? And the answer is absolutely no. If Westside doesn't want to operate a golf course, it and the city can amend the easement's permitted uses as long as any new permitted use is consistent with the easement's open space and recreational conservation purposes. Since Westside bought the land in 2019, it and the city have spread the false narrative that if the easement is preserved, the land must always be a golf course. I said the Colorado statute governs all conservation easements. How does the statute permit the easement to be terminated? The statute requires the landowner, Westside, and the city conservation easement owner to go to Denver District Court to secure a court order that, based on changed conditions on or surrounding the land, it's now impossible to continue fulfilling the easement's open space and recreational conservation purposes. And the statute uses the word impossible. Have Westside and the city gone to court to secure such an order? The answer is no. And are there any facts that would support such a court order? The answer also is no. So what are the legal reasons why you should vote no on referred question 2O? I'll address 3 legal reasons that should be critical to the league's membership. First, even if you might be unsure about whether you think the easement and open space should be preserved, you should vote no because the Hancock administration's ballot language is deceptive and inaccurate. It's my understanding that the league believes that ballot fairness and neutrality and integrity are crucial to our democracy. The ballot language written by the Hancock administration and referred to voters by city council couldn't be more deceptive and inaccurate and biased toward a yes vote. It presents a false choice between mixed-use development and a golf course. It improperly contains propaganda language supporting Westside's development plans. Our group strenuously opposed this language before city council, but our objections were ignored by most city council members. And I want to show you very briefly what I'm talking about with the language. So the top paragraph here is the language of 2O. And you'll see it talks about the voters voting to release the easement. And then they talk about the land needing to be operated as a golf course. And they also include this language about affordable housing, which is part of their development propaganda. What the language should do is track the ballot initiative 301 that was approved a year and a half ago. And I've got 301 here. And what 301 did was to require a vote of the Denver voters before there could be construction of any commercial or residential building on land protected by a city-owned conservation easement, and any partial or complete termination or release or abandonment of a city-owned conservation easement. It's very simple and straightforward. We presented the language at the bottom here to city council saying this clear and simple language should be presented to the voters. And it basically says, shall the voters authorize, number 1, commercial and residential development on the Park Hill Golf Course land that's protected by an easement owned by the city, and complete cancellation of the city-owned Park Hill Golf Course land easement. This is accurate and clear language that should have been approved by city council if they wanted to put this matter on the ballot. The second legal reason why you should vote no is that West Side and the city have failed to comply with the requirements of the Colorado Conservation Easement statute regarding terminating the easement. They're putting the cart in front of the horse. The third legal reason why you should vote no is that abandonment of the conservation easement by the city would constitute a multi-million-dollar gift from Denver taxpayers to West Side in violation of Article 11, Section 2 of the Colorado Constitution. This constitutional provision prevents donations from public entities like the city of Denver to a private party like West Side. Breaking the easement would be giving West Side the development rights that the city owns. The amount of this unconstitutional gift would be the fair market value of the city-owned development rights that are conservatively estimated to be at least $60 million, and that the Denver Post editorial board recently estimated to be worth $184 million. As the Denver Post editorial board wrote 9 days ago, voting yes on referred question 2.0 would be a sweetheart deal, just not for Denver taxpayers. So Maria?
Yes, you ready for me?
Yeah.
Good. Like Woody said, the 2.0 poses a false choice between development and open space. What you're seeing here is the last large parcel of open space in Denver. The league has platforms that deal with environmental equity and stewardship. And to carry them out, the league recognizes that we need zoning changes that protect our natural resources, that manage the land as a finite resource and incorporate principles of stewardship. Protection of scenic vistas and open space. You can see the mountain view there, which will be destroyed. Land use decisions that protect our resources and preserve our quality of life. Policies that meet current environmental, economic, and human needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet the same goal. That is, we should be planning for the next 7 generations. What we have now is a city that suffers from one of the nation's most severe heat island effects, according to the National Weather Service. The EPA says Denver is the 8th worst of the large metro areas nationwide for ozone pollution and has been downgraded from serious to severe. Half of Denver is now paved over or built up compared to 19% in the early 70s, exclusive of the DIA area. Only 8.5% of land in Denver is used for parks and recreation compared to 24% in DC, 21% in San Francisco, 19% in San Diego, and 18% in Portland. Denver Department of Public Health and Environment and Denver Parks and Recreation, as well as Community Planning and Development, have done a number of studies on the environment of Denver. Northeast Park Hill and the rest of the inverted L, that's the area along the I-70 and I-25 corridors, have the highest areas of vulnerability to extreme heat in the city. They have high impervious surfaces and create an urban heat island effect, where heat is amplified due to the properties of man-made structures that absorb and trap heat, like the development that's proposed by West Side. The area has low tree canopy, low access to shaded space and green space, and includes the most polluted zip code in the country, and a neighborhood along I-70 that is just still reeling from the widening of I-70 and the condemnation of their homes. Area has low park access. It has an equity score of 5 in Denver, which means it's an area of the greatest need for park access. The Northeast Park Hill, Clayton, and Elyria Swansea area are way below the national average of 13 acres per 1,000 residents. The city would need to increase total park acres to 274.8 within those 3 neighborhoods. That would require an increase of 183.5 acres to meet the national standards. What is stewardship in this context and in a city that is in dire need of affordable housing? The Denver Historians Colloquium has weighed in on this. in a March 3 open letter to the voters of the city and county of Denver, signed by Tom Noel and 6 other historians. They say Denver has been blessed with a long history of placing value on parklands that contribute to a sense of place and to connect the city with its landscape setting. As members of the community with a keen awareness of Denver's urban form and its neighborhoods, there are ample areas for infill and redevelopment throughout the city. It is a flawed process on the part of city officials to present voters with a false choice between open space or development. And Woody, if you'd pull up slide number 6. Building on our past legacy of parks and vibrant neighborhoods should be at the core for creating a future that is sustainable, ecologically healthy, equitable, and resilient, especially to the challenges of a changing climate. Again, slide 6 shows in the yellow map points the areas nearby for infill and development. The yellow flags are developer acquired tracts that are ripe for development. The red dots show existing affordable housing projects. The League also has values of open government. And what has happened with this process has been anything but open. The League feels that government should be open, representative, responsible, accountable, efficient, and fair in its treatment of citizens and responsive to the will of the people. Denver has not been open or fair in pushing through Westside's development plans in the face of the conservation easement. If it was open and fair, then the process would not be backwards. The city and Westside should have gone to the court to address the conservation easement when Westside first purchased the land. Instead, we're being asked to weigh in on 2-0 with the conservation easement still in place and the court process not even started. Westside doesn't own development rights, so the $1 million planning process has been premature. And that planning process was a sham. The city refers to Westside as its client. It handpicked a steering committee dominated by pro-development members, including a seat for the developer. Community planning and development then proceeded to exclude the open space point of view from the process, first excluding Lisa Calderon from the steering committee, and then revoking SOS Denver's representation because we disagreed with the pro-development prevailing vision. However, the real estate developer was allowed to stay on the steering committee. The CPD kicked off the planning process with a push survey, which we had analyzed by Donna Rauner, who is a professor emeritus at CSU in the Department of Journalism and Media Communications. She said RRC has clearly conducted an unethical push survey designed to create demand for development. The survey gives the respondent development options that are not permitted under the conservation easement and does not allow responses that support the conservation easement and open space. Contrary to this push survey was the Greater Park Hill survey in 2019 of all residents of Park Hill, all the way up to the city limits on the north, which yielded the result that 77% wanted the land to remain open space. There were other flaws in the planning process. The city did not address anything outside of the 155-acre tract. It did no study of the health and environmental benefits of retaining the open space. There's been no traffic study, even though 10,000 new residents could be in the proposed development. And the city did no study of the impact of the proposed metropolitan districts on property taxes in the development. Woody, if you could pull out slide number 8, we can show people what this is going to look like. Because we've superimposed the 12-story buildings on the site so you can see what happens to the mountain view, what happens to the sunrise, how this is going to look. So at the top left, we've got Colorado Boulevard. At the right, we've got 40th in Colorado, and you can see what a 12-story building is going to do to our neighborhood. In November of 2021, 301 passed and 302 failed. but both by 62%, but the city didn't listen to the will of the people, instead forging ahead with the planning process. And it's no surprise that the steering committee came up with a plan to develop the land, even in the face of the conservation easement. We formed a protest petition group that gathered signatures to protest the rezoning. We got the 20% of the landowners that we needed within 200 feet of the Park Hill Golf Course land. And we submitted our signatures only to have the city attorney's office shift the rules, impose additional requirements of us, and invalidate the large landowners' signatures. The
Excuse me, you have 1 minute left, sorry.
Thank you very much. That protest petition that we actually successfully completed should have resulted in a requirement of a supermajority of council to pass the rezoning. And actually we had 4 nays, so there was no supermajority. The city has not been fair or open in this planning process. If 2-0 passes, Westside gets a sweetheart deal. And the taxpayers give a gift to the developer of 184 million, up to 184 million, according to the Denver Post on March 26. The Post urges a no vote on 2-0. Denver is not for sale. This is a bad business deal for our city, and we urge that you vote no on 2-0. Thank you.
Thank you. There are, as on the other side, there's a lot of questions in chat, so we'll start. What guarantee is there that if the land remains open space, the Denver Parks Department will maintain it? There will still be required maintenance.
Mario, why don't I take that? First of all, our goal is to preserve the conservation easement and eventually to have the city purchase the land for a fabulous new regional park. The purchase price for that would be no more than about $5 million. And the $5 million is the encumbered value. That means encumbered by the conservation easement of that land. And the city in 2019 paid $5 million to purchase 2 acres in the University Hills neighborhood of Southeast Denver. We all passed the Measure 2A a few years ago, which is the Parks and Open Space Acquisition Fund. And we are all paying 0.02 or 0.25% sales tax. And that's been collected ever since that was approved in 2018. The monies to acquire this land, first of all, would be Measure 2A money. And you can see from this photograph that this could be almost a turnkey park from the first opening. And over a period of years, as money was available, exciting new amenities can be added. And that money that we all voted to support is what should be acquiring this land. And we need the vision that the city had back in the early 20th century under Mayor Spear, when we created the park system that we now all enjoy. And in 2019, Mayor Wellington Webb and his administration bought this conservation easement. And we don't want to, in this landlocked city, we cannot give up precious open space like this.
So this is a question that was also asked of the Pro. In Governor Polis's recent State of the State, he said, quote, housing policy is climate policy, housing policy is water policy, housing policy is equity policy. How does your position meet the governor's statement? Does it?
I'm not sure how to answer that question because basically, again, this is a false choice between development and open space and affordable housing. This is not the only parcel in Denver that can be used for affordable housing. Listen to the historians who say there are areas for infill and development. That's where we should put our housing. We don't have to sacrifice the last big parcel of open space for housing. We have plenty of areas that already have infrastructure that are not going to require metro districts. And the metro districts are going to place a burden on the income restricted units that is going to drive up the housing costs in this development. The property tax relief only goes for 8 years, and Mr. Harris just said that the build out is going to be 10 to 12 years. That 8 years, by the way, dates from January 1, 2024. So I think that's illusory.
All right, there's a couple questions on the infill that you both have talked about. Can you guarantee that the developers of infill lots will not buy their way out of affordable housing commitments? What will you do about the local businesses that would be displaced, such as Scratch, Prodigy Coffee, that provide local jobs?
Does anybody understand that question?
Well, I think I understand. I mean, I understood part of it. I mean, the land that we identified around the 40th and Colorado Light Rail has been purchased by 2 different development groups. They obviously have plans for these properties, but when you really look at what's going to happen in this city, not in my lifetime, but in the lifetime of my children and grandchildren, there will be one continuous mixed use residential and commercial development all the way from 40th and Colorado Light Rail over connecting with Rhino. And the people who are going to live and work in those very dense neighborhoods, which will include affordable housing, undoubtedly, there will be incredible pressure for affordable housing. And those people will need the open space for their health and recreational benefits.
Are the locations you pinned ready for redevelopment? Are they zoned? Will the owner donate land for affordable housing or for a grocery store? Another question on the infill.
Well, we can't speak for these developers, and we're just scratching the surface when we've identified the 36 acres that have been assembled over there. But undoubtedly, there will be development that will include whatever is marketable at the time, including the affordable housing requirements that have just been imposed by the city. But you cannot take, as Maria said, this last open space, a significant piece of open space in Denver, and give it up, because once there's a concrete on 1 square foot of this land, it will never see the light of day again, and our city becomes unlivable.
I want to add that at these public meetings where developers of affordable and market rate housing trot out their plans, I always ask, how much is going to be devoted to open space? And the answer is always 10%, because that's what the city requires. And if you can imagine only 10% where all of those yellow flags are, those folks are going to build high rises around the 40th and Colorado station, and they're not going to have park space. So this is going to be this open space is going to be really essential to the development that's going to occur around it.
Here's another question about developers around. Has SOS been working with the developers of the potential development sites identified on your slide with yellow and red flags to build affordable housing and to prevent displacement of the current businesses in the area?
That's not really our mission. We're not developers. We're not in the real estate business. We're a grassroots organization of citizens that is interested in protecting this open space.
So this is from someone who's participated in community meetings for the past 2 years and read the conservation easement language. And it clearly states that this site needs to remain a golf course or be used for golf associated activities. How would you respond to this?
Yeah, let me address that. We've on our website, there is a very short legal opinion that includes signatories of Patricia Wells, who was a former Denver city attorney and who for 23 years was general counsel for the Denver Water Department. And the simple answer to that is that, as I said before, if Westside chooses not to operate a golf course on this land, Westside and the city can amend the conservation easement for new permitted uses, as long as those new permitted uses are consistent with the open space and recreational conservation purposes of the easement. And this is this false narrative, and they built it, as I said earlier, into the ballot measure that they're deceptively asking people to vote on. They're saying you can either have a golf course forever or you're going to have development. And that is a false choice that this League of Women Voters group should certainly not support because it's misleading.
So if this passes, is there anything that a new mayor and council could do to push the use of the property in a more open space direction?
That's hard to say. We're not supposed to talk about the lawsuit tonight, but if this does pass, there is a pending lawsuit that challenges just about everything that the city's done on the way to this development project.
This again, sorry, I was with another question. I should have asked it at the same time. Is this correct? I've heard that if the measure doesn't pass, the developer could sell the easement back to the city and it wouldn't be required to remain a golf course.
Well, if the city acquired it, the city would have to acquire it with monies allocated by city council. And city council would, we certainly would be arguing that the purpose of the acquisition would be to have a regional park, buy it for no more than $1 million.
How much would it cost the city to develop a 150-acre park? Would our taxes be used to maintain the park under an OS-A public park structure?
Well, there would certainly be expense in building a park, but it depends on what's in it. What you see in this slide right here is not that different from what we see at Central Park in Stapleton. The new park on the Park Hill Golf Course land won't be a Olmsted type park like City Park or Washington Park. It would be a dryland park like Central Park in Stapleton, and actually Stapleton/Central Park, which is one of the high park areas in Denver. And we have 2A money, and this parkland could actually be acquired for no more than its appraised value. The last time it was appraised indicates that the cost would be about $5 million because the land is encumbered by a conservation easement and development rights don't go with it.
Okay.
Can I just inject, just real quickly to carry on to that? I mean, we've heard the arguments from the supporters of 2.0, and basically they're treating this as something other than a massive real estate development project that would put at least 3,200 households on this land. And this land is protected by a conservation easement. What does a conservation easement mean? I described it earlier under the state statute definition. And if we tear up conservation easements, what agreements are still viable?
Okay. Would SOS support the purchase and demolition of for sale homes inside of neighborhoods for the purpose of turning them into parks, like the city has done before on 8th and Oneida, when the Kittredge Castle was turned into Kittredge Park? I have to say, I don't know about Kittredge Park.
I don't know about Kittredge Park either. I don't know what SOS would or would not support as you know in the abstract.
There's several questions around why isn't a 100-acre park enough? And who would be paying for the water in if it remained open space or remained the golf course?
Well, the acquisition and the maintenance would be paid for by the city. And as Maria said, you know, one exciting thing about this is if we can preserve the easement, there should be a legitimate planning process citywide about what should go on this land and how much of it should be essentially low water use land, how much of it should be developed into various recreational uses. And but the cost of this is a cost that a city like Denver needs to pay in order to have a livable community. We need open space and we need to take care of it.
Why isn't the 100-acre park enough? 150 versus 100?
Because the land is protected by a conservation easement. And it should all be preserved as open space. Once the conservation easement is terminated or broken on the promise of a 100-acre park, anything could happen. The development agreement could be amended to decrease the park space. The community benefits agreement can be amended by the parties. So there are no guarantees. This conservation easement is the only protection we have for this open space. We have seen the city over the years make attempt after attempt to grab park space and open space for development. We saw it with Hensel Park. We've seen it at City Park, where they wanted to put the aquarium in City Park. They wanted to put a movie theater in City Park. They wanted to put a regional festival attraction in City Park. So our open space is constantly under attack. We need to protect it. And the only protection we have now is the conservation easement. We have 155 acres protected right now. Why don't we have the third largest park in Denver on this land?
And let me just address that.
This neighborhood deserves it. We don't deserve the shrinking 100-acre park with the detention sump and all of the little alleyways of little green boulevards lining the roads that are going to go into this development.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the 100-acre number is a really illusory. First of all, even the west side has now admitted it's about 95 acres. That includes the 25 acres of the Big Bowl, which is the stormwater drainage area, which flooded quite a bit last summer. And as Mario pointed out, we're really looking at, 65 acres at most, which is contiguous parkland, because the balance of this land is in along Colorado Boulevard with green space. They're counting that, and they're counting the the pathways between buildings.
So you referred to 2A money. The person saying there's already a park maintenance deficit that the money is earmarked for. How is it equitable to take that money when a 100-acre park is possible from the developer?
Well, I guess my response is this is a unique opportunity for people to have a vision in this city that's comparable to the visions that the early settlers had when they bought open space and that Mayor Spear had in the early 20th century. And we can't not put incredible value on preserving this open space.
All right. Someone had asked earlier on what candidate properties mean.
Can you repeat that?
What candidate properties mean?
I don't understand that question. Maybe somebody can explain.
I don't understand either.
Okay, so it's possible that it was something that I heard. Is there anything you would have done differently in this process?
Well, we really had very little power in this process because from the time Westside bought the property, the development of the property was like a steamroller coming down the line. There was no stopping it. There was no discussion in the steering committee of the conservation easement or the environment or any of those factors, or traffic, any of it. So we really have had no voice. If SOS had not done the work we did on 301, the citizens of Denver would not be getting a vote on 2-0 like they're going to have on April 4th. So what would we have done different? I'm not sure. We've had to really work really hard to get where we are today. And the city has thrown up all sorts of, I won't call them barriers, but I'll just say the city and West Side, with their huge budgets, the city spent $1 million on this planning process when West Side doesn't have development rights and the conservation easement hasn't been addressed. So what I would have done different, I would have, maybe we should have filed another lawsuit and said, well, we did file a lawsuit saying the city and West Side need to make whatever effort they can to terminate this conservation easement before we start planning for this land. Because this is a perpetual conservation easement, and it is not designed under state statute to be terminated even by a vote of the people. They have to go to court.
I guess I'd add that if I could do something different, I wish we had a sugar daddy that had the resources that West Side has. We know that West Side spent $500,000 last month on their election fight. We expect they're going to spend at least $1 million going forward. And if we had a sugar daddy that could put money like that in our pockets, we maybe would have an easier time at fighting this battle. But we're a little grassroots citizen organization with over 250 contributors to our campaign effort.
So there's another question about housing development. Do you think the housing development planned elsewhere in the city would be enough to resolve Colorado's housing shortage?
Well, I don't think that the available housing stock in Denver is going to solve the housing shortage for the whole state, because that question says Colorado's housing shortage. I think that we ought to listen to these historians who have a pretty good idea of what the built environment in Denver looks like. And we ought to ask the city to identify opportunities for new housing that do not involve surrendering open space. I don't think that's our job. I think it's the city's job.
And I'd add that I don't know a time when people have talked about, as somebody suggested earlier, tearing down structures and building open space. It's the other way around. People are covering up open space with massive structures, and that's what's being proposed here.
How are we doing for time, Pearlanne?
We have about 2 minutes. So I think I'll ask the same question I did to the other group. Can we believe the dream of a great park? Is Denver getting a good deal by voting no on 2-0, sorry.
So you're opening up this to both groups of presenters.
No, just I asked that before. So just to this group
Okay.
for their finishing couple minutes.
Would you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, of course. Can we believe in the dream of a great park? And is Denver getting a good deal if we vote no on 2-0?
I would say yes and yes. We can realize the dream of a great park. And if 2-0, if we say no on 2-0, we are preventing a $184 million giveaway to this developer and a really bad business deal for Denver.
All right, any closing thoughts? You have a minute or so left.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the community benefits agreement, because I want the community to know that this community benefits agreement was not performed with the best practices for community benefits agreements in general. They should be transparent, inclusive, and accessible to the community. And there's some red flags that show that this CBA does not truly benefit the local community. The negotiation process was conducted in secret. It was not transparent. The people who were negotiating did not come forward. They did not identify themselves. They were handpicked by the developer and politicians, and the developer only met with those people. The community was not brought in to the process. And I'm very worried about enforcement of this thing. The only people who can enforce it are the people who signed it, and they have to pay their own attorney's fees and costs. I don't know that these nonprofits have the wherewithal to truly enforce this agreement if there's a default. I am really worried about this community benefits agreement. And I'm also worried about the promises, like the property tax relief that only goes for 8 years from January 1, 2024, when the build out is 10 to 12 years, according to Mr. Harris. So there's a bunch of illusory promises that I am very worried about.
All right.
Also, there are no monetary damages allowed if Westside has to be forced to perform under this community benefits agreement.
All right, we'll need to leave it there. That was the 25 minutes. Sue, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, I really want to thank all the presenters. I think you have given us a lot of food for thought about the referred question 2.0. I hope this has offered a lot of different perspectives and information for the people who attended this briefing. We appreciate your being here and joining us. Things happen very fast. If you want to read what happened in chat that you didn't get to read, that will be part of what is available on our website for you to review, and you can hear again what the speaker said if it went by too fast. And of course, our website can be accessed by people who weren't able to come tonight. We really appreciate this. This is what voter education is about, is offering information, offering perspectives, and allowing people to make up their own minds. So thank you very much. Please remember to vote. Please encourage everyone you know to vote. The ballots, I think, are going to be mailed out sometime. I think it's next week, and April 4th is the voting day. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you to my colleagues in the League of Women Voters who helped make this production a good opportunity for Denver voters. Good night.
Thank you.